Imagine a man naked silent, his body shimmering like a living god, coated entirely in powdered gold. He stands at the edge of a still sacred lake, high in the misty Andes of Colombia. Thousands watch in reverent silence. Priests chant. Drums echo like thunder through the valley. This is no myth. This is no fantasy. This is El Hombre Dorado, the Golden Man, a ruler not crowned by conquest, but by fire, water, and gold offered to the gods. And with each step into the raft, with each golden idol cast into the water, he seals a covenant with the spirit world. Then, at the lake's heart, he dies beneath the surface and vanishes. What began as sacred ritual, passed down by the Muisca people, was soon twisted by foreign tongues, hungry hearts, and imperial minds. Spanish conquistadors heard the tale, and heard only what they wanted to hear: a city made of gold, a kingdom rich beyond reason, a treasure that could crown empires. From this moment, a legend was born. But it was no legend of glory. It became a story of blood, betrayal, and madness. A curse that consumed kings and peasants, explorers and tyrants for centuries. Men vanished, armies collapsed. Jungles devoured those who dared to search. And still, the golden shadow remained, always just out of reach. What was El Dorado, really? A city? A man? A lie? Or something more dangerous than anyone ever imagined? Welcome to Tales Beyond Time. This is the true story of El Dorado, the curse of the Golden Man. They didn't see gold as wealth. It was spiritual, a divine metal that symbolized the energy of the sun and the favor of the gods. Upon his ascension, the new ruler underwent a transformation, not just of power, but of soul. And deep within their belief system was a mysterious ceremony, unlike anything the world had ever seen. The air was thick with incense. Flutes played haunting melodies. And there, on the shore, the chosen one was stripped bare and covered head to toe in sacred gold dust until his body gleamed like a molten statue in the sun. Long before European boots trampled the soil of South America, the highlands of present-day Colombia echoed with the quiet power of the Muisca people, an ancient civilization that built no pyramids, waged no great wars, yet held something far more enchanting, a secret ritual of gold and divinity. The Muisca lived in a world shaped by sacred lakes, lunar cycles, and intricate cosmology. As he floated to the lake's center, high priests cast offerings into the water jewels, emeralds, and exquisite goldwork, each a tribute to the gods below. And then, in total silence, the Golden Man dove into the lake, submerging both his body and his ego, re-emerging cleansed, reborn as king. It began with the leader Azipa, chosen not by brute force, but by bloodline and ritual. At Lake Guatavita, a crater lake ringed by steep cliffs and dense forest, the people gathered in anticipation. He was no longer a man. He was a living offering, a golden spirit walking between the mortal world and the divine. He boarded a ceremonial raft adorned with burning incense and golden idols. This wasn't just spectacle. It was cosmic order. Not a spiritual rite, but a kingdom built on wealth beyond imagination. Would be devastating. It bound the people, the land, and the spirits in one golden moment. But the ritual wasn't meant to be seen by outsiders. And when the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the early 1500s, they didn't understand what they were hearing. They twisted the tale, if only one is brave enough to take it. They imagined not a golden man, but a city of gold, the highlands of Colombia. And thus, the transformation began. Molded by conquest and empire, twisted the meaning. A sacred tradition turned into a legend of greed. A ritual of balance became a magnet for madness. But many, the Spaniards heard fortune and plunder. The German adventurer Nikolaus Federmann, backed by the Welser banking family, chased the same elusive prize. The conquistadors imagined an entire city, a kingdom, 3 men, nothing but cold stone temples and confused villagers. 3 armies, 3 ambitions, a golden paradise ripe for conquest, and hostile territory. His men, dying from hunger, boiled their leather boots into soup and still pressed on. The Spanish called it El Dorado, ritual ashes and stories of a past that no longer lived, but they didn't know what they were chasing. For every failed expedition, the legend grew more golden, more elusive, more divine. Each new map stretched the borders of myth a little farther into the unknown, and the cost of misunderstanding this whisper from the past. In 1492, the old world collided violently with the new, fresh from the conquest of Quito. He wanted to be the man who discovered El Dorado, not just for Spain, but for himself. By the early 1500s, Spanish conquistadors, ruthless, desperate, and driven by tales of gold and glory, had already brought the mighty Aztec and Inca empires to their knees. But even those spoils weren't enough, because a new whisper had begun to slither through the taverns of Seville, across the decks of caravels, and into the ears of kings. There exists a land where a king is bathed in gold, where entire cities shimmer with wealth, where fortune waits untouched. The source of these whispers? They found ruins and smoke. Spanish explorers and chroniclers began to piece together accounts from captured indigenous peoples' half-understood rituals, fragments of stories, hints of sacred lakes and golden figures. But for another rumored wonder, La Canila, a mythical valley of cinnamon, rich with spice and gold. But the Spanish mines, where the Muisca spoke of ritual and rebirth, the canopy above choked out the sun. Trails turned to rivers of mud. He expected them to return in a matter of days. A man, a metaphor, strange cries echoed at night. Entire platoons became lost in the trees, wandering in circles until they collapsed. Horses died, supplies ran out. Men began eating leather, insects, and bark. Was unthinkable. Where the natives meant a golden man, and so began one of the most tragic misinterpretations in history. Enter the conquistadors, not just one. In 1536, Gonzalo Jimenez de Quesada led an expedition from the Caribbean coast deep into the Andes, carving a bloody path through dense jungle, disease-ridden swamps. From the west came Sebastian de Belalcazar. From the east, all 3 forces drawn by the myth of El Dorado arrived in the Bogotá Plateau nearly simultaneously. Each believed they had discovered the road to the Golden City. Each had found, instead of gold, instead of kings, but none of them accepted defeat. How could they? To admit El Dorado was only a ritual. The golden man, the chants, the offerings, all of it ended in these waters. So they assumed the obvious answer. They hadn't gone far enough. Surely, the real El Dorado lay deeper in the jungle, higher in the Andes, beyond the next mountain range. And so they kept going, into the heart of darkness, into an obsession that would swallow empires. The golden man had become something far more dangerous than a king. For days, water rushed out like a wounded beast. The shoreline receded. Muck and debris rose from the depths. He was now an idea, and ideas, especially those woven with greed, can be fatal. By the 1540s, the fever for El Dorado had reached a boiling point. What began as a ritual misinterpreted had now become a full-blown obsession. And no man embodied that fatal obsession more than Gonzalo Pizarro, the ambitious, iron-fisted half-brother of Francisco Pizarro, who had just crushed the Inca Empire in Peru and claimed unimaginable wealth. But Gonzalo wanted more. He wasn't content with silver mines or titles. In 1541, he assembled one of the largest expeditions in South American history. Over 4,000 men, hundreds of horses, massive supply caravans, fierce war dogs, and his secret weapon, a priest-turned-soldier named Francisco de Orellana. Their goal? To cross the Andes from Quito and plunge into the vast green abyss of the Amazon basin, searching not only for El Dorado, but the jungle had other plans. From the moment they entered the rainforest, the land fought back. Crocodiles stalked the waterways. Mosquitoes swarmed in black clouds. The heat was unbearable. The rain was endless. Men began dying within weeks, not from battle, but from starvation, fever, and despair. The deeper they pushed, the more surreal the landscape became. Then came the fractures. In a desperate move, Gonzalo ordered Francisco de Orellana to take a group of men and follow the river downstream in search of food. But Orellana never came back. Instead, he kept drifting east, guided by the current, deeper into the heart of the jungle. What he discovered would be legendary in its own right: the vast, untamed waters of the Amazon River. He returned to Spain, a hero hailed as a bold explorer who had charted one of the greatest rivers on earth. But Gonzalo Pizarro? He returned to Quito, a broken man. Of the 4,000 men who had marched proudly into the jungle, fewer than 80 returned alive. No gold, no cinnamon, no glory, only death, madness, and silence. But somehow, even this massive failure did not kill the legend. On the contrary, it gave it power. If men had died chasing El Dorado, surely it must be real. The jungle, they believed, had simply hidden it just out of reach. Maps turned to lies. Somewhere just beyond the bend of the river, beyond the fog-covered ridge, they swore they saw it. The myth had claimed its first great army, but it wouldn't be the last. It wasn't enough to chase El Dorado. They wanted to own it. At the heart of the legend of El Dorado lay a still, sacred lake, a shimmering eye in the mountains, cupped by cliffs and silence. Lake Guatavita. This was the stage of the Muisca's most sacred ritual. The Spaniards believed that the gold had to still be there, resting beneath the surface, waiting to be taken. If El Dorado was not a city, perhaps it was a lake, a liquid vault of ancient treasure. But to get to it, they would have to bleed the mountain. In 1545, just a few years after Gonzalo Pizarro's catastrophic expedition, a group of Spanish colonists devised a plan: drain Guatavita. Trembling in frontier towns, eyes wide with something between awe and horror, empty the lake, take the gold, claim the legend. Using thousands of enslaved indigenous laborers, they carved a deep gash into the crater's rim. Not from hunger alone, but from delirium. Their greed remembered. And there, glinting in the mud, they found it: golden figurines, nose rings, ornaments, proof that the legend had roots in reality. Financiers lost fortunes funding doomed expeditions. But then the mountain struck back. As they worked to deepen the trench, the walls of the lake collapsed. Tons of mud and water surged back in. Dozens of men were killed. The remaining treasure disappeared beneath thick silt, unreachable. Their language suppressed, their sacred lakes desecrated. Guatavita had swallowed its secrets once again. Centuries passed. Then, in 1911, a new generation of treasure hunters returned, this time with modern technology. They brought pumps, drills, and dynamite. They drained the lake almost completely, exposing its floor like a fossilized wound. But what they found was disappointing. They say, the golden man still waits. When worshipped, becomes a god with no mercy. A few golden trinkets, some broken statues. But no lost city, no massive hoard, no El Dorado. The truth began to seep in. Perhaps the Spaniards had misunderstood everything. Perhaps the gold had never been meant to be kept, but given. A sacred offering, a one-time sacrifice. A spiritual act, not a treasure map. Still, the legend persisted. Each failed attempt made the story stronger, stranger. Was Guatavita guarding a literal fortune or something far older and more dangerous? A truth buried in water and time? Even now, divers and adventurers still visit the lake, peering into its cold green depths. Some say at night, when the mist hangs low, you can hear drums. You can see the shadow of a raft in the moonlight, and you can almost make out the silhouette of a man made of gold standing still, watching you from the center, waiting. By the time the 17th century dawned, the jungles of Colombia were soaked with blood, and the bones of explorers lay scattered beneath the canopy like forgotten prayers. The dream of El Dorado had long since stopped being a quest for wealth, but the plans were quietly abandoned. It had become a disease, a fever, a curse. From the first step into the jungle, the air seemed to tighten around the throat. Men would laugh one day and vanish the next. Supplies rotted. And always a golden gleam, a distant shine, a promise that always disappeared the closer they got. For some, to conquer it, to silence the whispering trees and bend the legend to their will. But El Dorado does not obey. It misleads. It seduces. And then it destroys. A test. Stories began to surface, whispers from half-mad survivors. The Muisca didn't worship gold. They gave it away. And what did we do? We chased it. Destroyed to possess it. Misunderstood everything. Men had been driven to cannibalism. Others claimed to see visions, ghostly figures of golden priests guarding jungle temples, calling them deeper into the dark. Entire companies marched off the edge of maps and never returned, their names forgotten. Even those who didn't enter the jungle were not safe. In Spain, noble families were ruined by debt and disgrace. Some claimed the spirit of the Golden Man was exacting revenge, not just on individuals, but on the empire itself. And what of the indigenous people? The Muisca had been systematically dismantled, their rituals outlawed, but the story of the Golden Man never died. In secret, some whispered that El Dorado was never meant to be found. It was meant to test the hearts of men, to measure their greed, and to punish. A few scholars began to believe the truth wasn't in gold at all. It was in the lesson. That gold, that the more you chase it, the more of yourself you leave behind. Somewhere in the jungle, not as a prize, but as a mirror. For every explorer who looks into that mirror hoping to find a fortune, sees instead a reflection of their own hunger. And that, perhaps, is the most dangerous curse of all. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell. The Spanish crown crumbled. New republics were born. But through it all, El Dorado refused to die. The legends slipped like gold dust through the cracks of time, whispered in bars, scribbled in journals, hinted at in half-buried ruins. And in the 20th century, it found new believers. But these weren't conquistadors in armor. They were explorers in khaki, spies in suits, and if rumors are to be believed, Nazis in search of power far beyond gold. Yes, even the Third Reich heard the call of El Dorado. In the years leading up to World War II, Nazi Germany sent teams of so-called scientific expeditions across South America. Publicly, they studied plants, animals, and ancient cultures. Privately, some believed they were searching for occult relics, Atlantean connections, and most tantalizing of all, a source of sacred power tied to the Golden Man. In Colombia, they traced Muisca sites. They spoke to shamans. They collected ancient maps. Why? Some say Hitler believed in hidden energy centers across the earth, places of ancient technology and spiritual dominance. And Lake Guatavita was rumored to be one of them. The Nazis weren't alone. In the post-war years, American intelligence agents, British adventurers, and Colombian mystics all joined the hunt. Some sought gold, some sought power. Some claimed they were acting on dreams, visions of the Golden Man calling to them across time. In the 1960s and 70s, the Colombian government flirted with the idea of draining Lake Guatavita, again, this time with modern dredging machines. Why? Some said the lake floor was too unstable. Others whispered about strange readings, equipment failures, and an unspoken fear that whatever lay beneath the surface was better left alone. Still, the hunt never truly stopped. Their descendants remain, quiet, watchful. Some elders claim the spirit of El Dorado still protects the sacred places, that the gold was never meant for conquest, but for connection. Today, satellite images show strange geometric clearings deep in untouched rainforest. Are they natural, or remnants of something lost? Ancient alien theorists, treasure hunters, anthropologists, they all keep coming back. But the jungle has learned to hide her secrets well. El Dorado may no longer be gold. It may be an idea buried so deep, we've forgotten what it really meant. Or perhaps it's waiting to be found by someone who understands what no one else ever did, that some treasure isn't meant to be taken, only respected. El Dorado was never a city. It wasn't a map or a mine. It was a ritual, a mirror. Today, Lake Guatavita lies still, but its waters carry the echoes of gold, fire, and chance lost to time. The golden man wasn't hiding from us. He was warning us. And maybe still is. If this tale stirred your curiosity, if you feel history is more than textbooks, then you're in the right place. Tales Beyond Time reveals the truths buried beneath legends. Subscribe for more forgotten stories. Comment your theory. Was El Dorado real or a mirror for our greed? Like and share if you dare follow the whisper. Because some legends are never found. They find you